Hey everybody, welcome back to the Unreal Engine training stream. I'm your host Alexander Pascal, and joining us today are Tim Hobson and Ian Shadden. And everything's back to normal again because I'm here. Hi, how are you?
Normal?
No, normal-ish.
Normal-ish.
Today we're going to be talking about HLODs or HLODs.
HLODs.
Yeah.
We
were debating.
HLODs. Hierarchical.
Don't really know how it's
it.
supposed to be pronounced.
Say it.
Hierarchical.
Keep going.
Hierarchical level of detail.
There we go.
He can say those words.
I have a stutter.
He said it in the right order. It's good. Cool. So yeah, let's bring it on the main screen and show us what you got today.
Okay, so what we're going to run through here is hierarchical level of detail, or HLODs. So with these, what it is it allows you to use static actors in the level and set them up for to create these levels of detail for your level itself, so that as you're reducing your mesh draw calls
substantially
by doing this.
Because at the end of the day, a single static mesh actor will, yes, if it shares the same material as something else, it gets batched. However, still batching it, you still end up with draw call overhead. So what you want to do is be able to merge these things down, and the HLOD system allows this.
Right. So what we can do easily is like we have all these actors back here, as we can cluster these together so that way as we move around the level, it's actually reducing that draw call. So should we just go ahead and start with
activate it? And
let's go ahead and just enable
because this is a system that is actually really super easy to use.
Yes. No programming or anything like that. No blueprint setup. It's all really just easy to use here in the level.
It's a lot like light baking. We're gonna click a few buttons and we're gonna wait.
Okay.
And then we're gonna end up with stuff.
So the first thing here is, if you don't have your world settings panel already open, we'll just go up here to settings, world settings, and that's going to open up there. And if you just type in load, or either search for the load system section. LOD section. I have a problem with saying that way.
Actually, I guess we should ask chat, how do you pronounce LOD if you just pronounce the acronym? Because this could be like GIF and GIF for all we know.
LOD.
We say LOD. I mean, but he learned load.
Yeah.
So.
My schooling was cheap, so we'll go with that one. Okay, so here we have the enable the HLOD system. And what this does is, this is a level-specific setting. So you can use it for some of your levels, and some levels where you don't need it, you don't have to enable it. So the next thing we're going to do is, if we go up here to the HLOD window, what we'll have is this panel here that allows us to go ahead and set up all of our LODs.
Let's delete clusters really quick. It looks like we already had something set up in here. You can just delete clusters.
It looks like they say LOD.
You literally say LOD?
Yeah.
LOD, yeah.
And one person says load, but no one says LOD.
Hey, I got one person out there that says load. So all right. Now I don't feel so bad.
Level of drinking. Yes.
Oh,
I like for this one.
Okay, so what we have here is our base level, and it's showing that nothing has been generated so far. So what we're going to do real quick is go down here, and we have our levels of detail that we can add. So if we just set up a couple of levels here by clicking the add button, what we get is we now have these two levels here, and we can generate these settings for them for how we want them to work in the level. Let me try and squeeze this out here. So as for instance, if we take and generate these levels of detail, what we're going to get is we have the desired bounds radius here. 2000 is a pretty large radius for this small level. So what it's going to do is it's going to grab a lot of these actors. So if we just lower this down to like something like 500, and then for the next one, let's just say it'll go ahead and
it automatically starts upping it, right? Like.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, 1 second. So we got that one at 500. If you already have a value there and you click the plus button, what we'll get is we'll go ahead and generate the next one, which is at 1250. I think that's what it says. It's a little small.
Yes. Yes.
And my glasses prescription is a little old.
It's universally small text to read, but yes, it's at 1250.
Okay, so if you go ahead and do that after the fact, and go ahead and set up those there, it's going to propagate some of those settings on down for you without having to reset them up each time. So real quick, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and generate the clusters for this. and we go ahead and get all these actors here, or these levels here for, we have a level 0, which is going to be our base load, or LOD. And then we have
LOD, we've already discussed
LOD,
this.
I'm just going to say LOD. And then we have our LOD level 1. And what you see here is you get these, let me pull back.
You get groupings, basically.
Yeah, you get these groupings of actors, and if we expand the thing here, so we can actually see, okay, so this can grab it over here, what actors are actually included with it. So you'll also see here it says not built, because we haven't actually generated the meshes. This is just showing us a preview of what we're getting with it. So
right. So if you select it, you see that there's a little bounding volume back there, sphere that shows you roughly the size of the thing that's going to
let
be.
me zoom over here.
Get in there, and we gotta.
So if I click on it, you can actually see this bounding sphere now that is around a 500 radius, that is capturing these actors to make this specific LOD level. So the next thing we can do is, and it does this for, so with the larger one as well, so for the next LOD level, what we get is a larger radius of capturing more actors. And this really does a really good job of reducing the draw calls for our level. So let's really quickly go ahead and we'll generate the proxies for these.
Really quickly. And while it's doing this,
yeah.
the reason some people were trying to figure out what the preview image of this was. This is a docs project that I work in to create images of various things. And it just so happens to have a bunch of junk in the background, so it at least is visually appealing in some way or form. So this is actually really quick, all things considering, to generate clusters and to generate LODs. We had planned on cracking open one of the maps from the Infinity Blade content, and it took 3 minutes just to generate clusters. So it gets exponentially slower the more polygons we have once we go to generate proxy meshes. So as you can see, like we said, this is like light baking. This is a lot like light baking. You're just gonna push a button. It's gonna process. You're gonna go get some coffee. You're gonna come back, and maybe it'll be done. And yeah, it's well, we're just we're just waiting for a bit.
Yeah, sorry about that one.
Well, I mean, but this is what it does.
Yeah, this is the process of it. So,
I mean, there are some numbers that we
so
can
really
tweak.
quickly, just to go over, because I didn't show any of the settings yet for this, we'll just kind of cover what's happening here. So while the loads are the level of details are generating, what's happening is we're clustering those meshes together. We're creating a whole new mesh with it, and we're also generating a texture atlas for these, so that you actually get a single texture for that level of detail. It really helps to, again, reduce the draw calls. You have the options to not cluster these materials together in a texture atlas as well, which can make things quicker. And wow, this is going to be
it's still going.
Going to be a minute.
So how's everything going out there, guys?
They would actually like to know if it requires a high-spec PC to do this kind of stuff.
No, well, this kind of goes back to your level or your computer itself, I guess, because everything here is getting clustered together to make a mesh. So when you're doing that, you're actually using a lot of CPU power to create these new assets and save them in the project. So depending on your specs of your PC, it can take a while for some. It can take less time for more, or for other ones. Like I know with Infinity Blade, for instance, like I know we were talking about that one, I used that as a test project originally when I was testing this out. I had set up 3 levels of detail for the HLOD system, and it took more than an hour to go through and do all of these things and cluster them down. I was using very moderate bounds radiuses as well, so I was using like 500 or 1,000 and grabbing larger chunks here. Okay, looks like we're, oh man, about halfway there for level of detail 0.
Yeah.
What version of the engine are we working out of today?
This is out of 414.
But is it in 413?
Yes, it's actually been around for quite a while. I think it was 411 that we actually introduced it, or either 410.
Nice.
Had it as experimental. So yeah, it's been around since last year. I think September of last year is the last time I started working with it in 2015. And it's come a long way since then. We've actually redone the whole interface with having the window here. Originally, everything was done through the world settings panel there, which doesn't leave a lot of room there to work with. Having this whole robust system here for this window actually allows you to work with these clusters and everything much more easily. Any other questions so far?
Let's see here. I'm not sure if you'll have the answer for this one, but can you use computer GPU to help the CPU on this process?
I'm actually not sure on that one.
All right.
Yeah.
So just to reiterate, someone wants to ask, Harha is asking to reiterate on this. So what is this doing? Generating lower detailed meshes for observers who are longer than a certain radius away?
Yes. Okay. So what's happening here is all this is doing is just it's taking the actors. So if we look at this one here,
Munging the meshes together.
yeah. And once this actually generates, I'll be able to actually open one of these and show you what's going on. But it's clumping these together into a single mesh and a single material for that mesh. And what we're not reducing the poly count of this here with just the HLOD system itself. There are integrations for SimplyGone to actually use it. I'm fairly certain our load system may support it at some point, but right now it currently doesn't with 414.
What, SimplyGone?
No,
Or
our own implementation.
Yeah, the internal stuff is not ready, as
Yeah,
far as I understand.
this is the first release for that, so it's still coming along.
All right. And once you generate one of these assets, you can move it around everywhere, or do you have to regenerate it if it gets moved?
Yeah, I would regenerate because what's happening here is it's creating these clusters based on where they are. So for instance, if you move one of these meshes here for like one of these boxes over here, when you still pull back, the HLOD system is going to recognize that the already generated cluster. It's not going to automatically update that. So so you don't have to go through this whole process again. We'll actually walk through this as well. You can right click on one of these and actually just regenerate that single cluster to go ahead and remove that one, or either regenerate it with whatever newly has been placed in that area.
Oh, that's really useful. Okay, that was from Javier. Next question we've got coming in. Haveti's got a question about what is the difference between this HLOD and using instant static meshes, GPU-driven performance differences, stuff like that. Yeah. That's the question.
Sorry. So.
Do you want me to repeat the question? You're right.
Yeah. Sorry, I just blanked for a second. Hierarchical instant static meshes are a different system than what HLODs are. So with HLODs, this is a level-specific thing here. So it's not the same as working with instant static meshes like in blueprints and setting them up that way. So it's going to be a little bit different.
All right.
I'm not sure I have like a very definitive, solid answer. But
all right. So does this work only? So Smiler2 is asking, does LOD only work based on distance, or can we do this based off of scale as well?
It should be screen space.
Screen space?
Right.
Okay.
We do this off screen space, and you actually have these options to actually set it up. Like, so if anyone's ever familiar with regular static mesh LODs, you have the option to auto-generate your level of detail distance, or you can actually override that. And you have those same options here in the settings as well. So that's not an issue to go ahead and adjust those. And we actually have there's a new console command that actually allows you to, if you don't want to have to go through each one of these, you can actually scale it on a multiply. So,
right, I remember seeing that when I come across. It was implemented for what happens if you have a gigantic static mesh.
Right.
Like you have a giant ship.
Yep.
Right, and you're on a small boat. you need to have actually a massive multiplier, or else it's just going to start popping in between because it's taking up too much space. And it can't figure out exactly how much screen space it's taking up. Right. But you need to be able to drop it because you're at weird angles to it, right? Like you don't need all that detail.
All right.
So yeah, we're still generating in the background.
Oh man, sorry about that.
Just a heads up, it does take a little bit of time to generate these.
I mean,
we do have a ton of questions coming in.
Here's the nice thing. We're only going to do this once, and we're just going ahead and handling Q&A right now.
Yep.
And when it gets done, we'll be able to show you exactly what's happened across everything and what you can do with that.
Yep.
So I guess we can just have you asked any of these?
I got some more over here that are coming in.
Sweet.
Then we have some of these as well. Let's just hop on into this doc. Oh, Lauren's throwing in questions here. Thank you. Let's see here. We got through a lot of these questions already. How is collision handled for the HLOD mesh? As the documentation doesn't mention it explicitly.
Okay.
Tim, apparently you've given some pointers on this one before.
Yeah, I tend to help out on the forums quite a bit, so it's like
he's a good guy. This guy over here, Tim.
Yeah.
Go follow him on Twitter, by the way. Ask him questions.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, so with collision, you actually have the opportunity or the option to generate in the settings here in the HLOD details window. You can actually take the collision primitives that have already been set up for your meshes and combine those into the clusters that are created. So that way you don't have to worry about going back and setting these up. Now, that's not always the best option because you want to always, like with anything with collision, you want to make sure that you're optimizing your games by having the fewest amount of primitives for your collisions because it's less calculations to have to worry about. And some of these generated clusters, you're not going to need that level of collision at a farther distance.
Even if you need collision at all.
Yeah, if you even need the collision, right. So what you can do is, like, once the HLOD generates, you can open it up, and you can actually, since this is its own static mesh that we have access to here in the HLOD folder that is generated after this whole lengthy process, what you can do is open that up, and you can actually see the generated primitives that are there. You can regenerate the collision to make it more accurate. You can actually generate additional levels of detail there, since it's its own static mesh. You can actually use the like Simply Gone or our own integration of mesh decimation and use that as its own collision.
And it looks like we're done in the background.
Yay.
Yeah, actually, we had a question about that.
Okay.
The system specs. It takes a while to build any of this in general, but what are our system specs on this PC? And I'm sure that we can bring that up pretty quick just to give everyone a reference.
Beefy?
I know that this one's pretty beefy. It's got a Titan X in it, but we're not doing a GPU calculation.
No, just right-click computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
See you. Yeah, just right-click computer. Up.
Right.
Up to the right.
Right-click.
There we go.
Up.
Trying to remember which version of Windows we're on.
I know, I
over
just
here.
got Windows 10, so.
Properties.
Gosh, we got to keep up with all this rapid changes.
Okay, so our CPU
OS.
in this case is an Intel Xeon CPU E5-2620 version 2, 2.10 gigahertz with 32 gigs worth of RAM.
That's a lot of RAM.
That's a lot of RAM, but I don't think it's really crazy in the number of cores. Right-click on the taskbar down at the bottom.
Yeah.
And do Start Task Manager.
Okay, so as a note, this thing has a Titan X.
Performance?
Still, we're at that 7.6 mark. What's the most you can even get on that? Jeez.
3. It looks like 12 cores.
Okay.
We have 12 threads. We have 12 threads to operate with.
Ah.
Whether or not we're actually using 12 threads, well, we'd have to click the button again, and I say we don't click the button again.
No, we've
So-
we've got our test assets.
We got our test assets done, so let's not click the button again.
So what I'm calling this one is you press the button and you go make dinner and you come back kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. This is not meant to... Honestly, you're probably not meant to run this on your own. Two, this is... If you had a giant level, you're probably not quite doing it right. You know, if it's just one level with all your static meshes, like, there's a problem. What you'd want to do is split it out into a number of sub-levels, and then you could use a build process later to build those across multiple machines. So there are ways to optimize across the system, or, hey, you're done with a section of the level, run the HLOD system on it, and then don't touch it again.
Yep.
Right? Like, and break that out into its own level, and then you're fine. Like, there are ways to get around constantly rebuilding these things.
So it's probably just a general good practice. That way you don't waste a lot of your time. So what I did here is like originally it's like I just set up like, a small bounds radius. And it's probably to do a small level like this. Let it, that took what, 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
10 minutes. It was about 10 minutes.
To build. So I would say find your good bounds that you want for your levels and the number of meshes that you have together. Because if you have a lot of static meshes, for instance, like if you got a lot of foliage, it's kind of really spread out. Having a small bounds radius probably isn't going to be the best thing or the most productive thing for it. So.
You're going to get minimal savings.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
kind of also in that same vein of when should I be running this and how often and all that, Ominique is wondering, can I run this in the background while using the editor? Or is this going to take up the full process?
No.
Yeah, this takes up your whole process.
Yeah, if I actually had access to a lot of stuff, I would have been dragging around showing you some stuff.
Right. No,
minimize those.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
It eats the editor while it's operating.
And just a quick answer for one of these, it does not work with dynamic objects.
No, it does not
this
work
is
with
about
dynamic.
static.
No, actually, quite literally, this is about static meshes.
Right.
Literally, I believe just static mesh components. I don't even think we can throw in procedural mesh components. Because it's...
It has to be pre-baked, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is just like baking lighting. You're baking.
We're baking things that are
hierarchical
already
LOD.
basically done, right? Like
Yep.
procedural mesh component, we could get into a situation. Yeah, maybe it's static, but even then.
Wouldn't it be better if it didn't eat the editor? Yeah, it would.
Well, here's the problem.
You have to
wait,
balance
let's back that up real quick.
Yeah.
Would it be better if it didn't eat the editor? Of course, it'd be better if it didn't eat the editor. But if you move something, where would it be?
Oh, yeah, you would
Right?
recalculate everything.
You're recalculating everything. And plus, we're probably eating all your processors while it's operating. So you can do stuff, maybe. But
Not going to be a good experience.
yeah, with light baking, the swarm agent takes over and it runs in the background and takes the previous locations of everything. But if you take something, you've just dirtied your lighting and you got to rebuild it. So, there's a trade-off for everything that goes into it. So this system was generated with the understanding that things are in place and you need to walk away for a little bit. That's all. Or load up another instance of the editor and work on your blueprints. Or do this on another machine. Or whatever.
That was actually another question: is could I have another instance open? And so, yeah, I guess.
yeah.
You could do that.
You could. Be careful.
If
Don't
you-
edit your levels.
Hey, if you've got the processing power, the RAM, the everything for it, why not?
I'll tell you right now, I've done it. Now, mind you, I wasn't editing this map. I was running HLOD on the map, and then I was working in blueprints that were not placed in the map. And it works fine.
Because
it was slow, but it works fine.
Because if you do that, you're actually going to get the save warning.
Yeah.
And it's like, cannot save this asset.
Yeah, cannot save this asset. It's currently being used
because it's been dirtied by both. So
yeah, and then you're kind of like, oh darn.
So a lot of wasted time and work there.
Yep.
Okay, so let's jump right back into this. So let's open up this folder, and what we're going to see here is a bunch of actors.
A bunch of meshes.
So we've got a bunch of meshes here that we've actually generated based off these levels here.
And textures
and materials. Right. So instead of actually just opening one of these individually, I'm going to actually do everything from the panel here. So if I go and I select load actor 1, and we'll go back to this one in the little corner, and move this over here, and we'll go back to my details panel. And if we scroll up, so we get the load actor here, level of detail actor here, and if I open this, what we can see is I've now got these 4 meshes here that have been combined into a single one. We also get a single material that has been combined. And if we open this, when we actually look, we can actually see the texture has actually been combined here. Probably not the best texture to show off.
Well,
but everything
is the normal map been combined? I don't know if we
you get all the textures here
so
that actually show
the
everything.
normal map.
So,
but of course, our normal map doesn't have anything on it because there's a detail normal map that gives us the detail of the lighting on these surfaces.
Some great UV spacing.
Well, let's be clear that again, these are for LOD actors. This is not for something that you stick your face on.
right.
Yep.
When we get that close to it, we're using the raw static mesh with the good materials on it.
Yeah, so I'll just take this opportunity to hit up the documentation for HLODs. Check that out. There's a really good example in there for showing the texture atlas and from the Infinity Blade content pack that we have that can show you how these kind of get packed together. So with the static mesh, again, everything kind of gets, this little 500 radius bounds area that we got that has generated this clump.
Grab one of the LOD 1 actors.
Okay. The ones that are larger. So let's expand this one here, and what we see is we've actually got a larger clump of actors.
Yeah.
And let's find, that's that same little area there.
We can't see it. Use the bar.
Oh yeah.
So we can actually see it. Yeah.
Okay, so the force viewing level load up here, we can actually go through each one.
Max it out.
And if we max it out, what we see here is this is now our larger clump for this area. You may have noticed the material has changed a little bit.
A lot.
A lot. There's some options down here for the materials and how they're generated. I'm actually going to close that and expand just this one section here. So for mesh generation, the merge settings, and what we can see under here is material settings. And you have a bunch of different options like include a metallic map, include the normal map, which is on by default. Metallic is off by default along with roughness. And what you can actually do is you can actually set constant values for these as well. So if you need to have some of that roughness value lowered or metallic increased, same with specular and emissive maps.
Just remember that you're not getting your full materials out of these. If you've done any really nice detail stuff, multiplied a bunch of normals together, or crazy like fine detail, you're not getting it. Like that's not coming along for the ride because again, these aren't going to be close to the camera. So you may run into instances where we're really close, and even at a distance, this would be a noticeable change.
Right.
But it's also because in this case, we didn't do anything with the metallic map. We didn't do anything with the roughness map. So we're not reflecting the world like we should be reflecting.
Right.
So there's a bit of that going on.
But there is.
But it makes it really noticeable for showing you guys what's going on.
So for all you material wizards out there that want to go back and tweak these kind of things, you can actually also open up your parent material. And what we get here is our material where all these things have been generated. So these options, like where things are listed, is where it did not fill in a map for it. So these are options that have not been turned on in those settings. You also get these static switches that are now in that instance material that it was created here. So if you want to go back in and create a mask to do some of these material tricks and make things look a little bit better, you do have that full capability to also go back and tweak that. Okay, so let's see here. So for some of the things here, if we're just going to do HLODs for the level, just to go over some of the other basic settings here, like desired filling percentage, you have this option here to determine how it decides some meshes should be clustered together. By doing 50, you're kind of like sitting middle ground on whether some should be filling this percentage. If you crank it up to 100, it'll try and grab the most that it can for this area and fit them in. You can also set the minimum number, so that way it's not grabbing an HLOD of just one actor if it's a large actor that fits the bounds. This is a really good one if you want to try and minimize these smaller clusters as well. Talked a little bit earlier about the mesh generation setting for screen size. You can actually set that here, so that way we're seeing when the transition is happening as we pull back. This is a very small screen size, so it takes a little while before it starts to transition in.
It's kind of the point, though.
Exactly. So, and a really good stat to use here would be stat scene rendering, so that way you can actually see your mesh draw calls and you can monitor that and see that those are dropping down as it's going.
We would turn that on, but it'd be impossible to see on the screen as it is.
Yeah. See here, for the material settings, one other thing that we did talk about. Where is it? You can actually set the texture atlas size. So for some of these meshes that are going to be smaller, so everything's getting clustered together. So if these actors are, let's just say they're using like a 64 by 64 texture, and we want it to, and we're going to be using a lot of meshes, and we want to keep some of the detail that's in those normal maps or the diffuse texture, we can actually set that here, so that way we can actually have a higher texture size. If you don't need the higher texture size, you can always lower it as well. So that's just another good optimization.
So what about, since a lot of static meshing is like, I have a lot of crates in here, right? Does it reuse that section of the texture atlas? Or will each one of those exactly the same things create new points within the texture atlas? That's actually a question I never got answered, I don't think.
Yeah, that's actually one I don't know offhand either.
It seems like that would be the smart thing to do, but...
But if anyone actually does have that question, it's like that would be something I could follow up with Yuri with and definitely find out.
Good to know.
Put that in the docs. Yes, I don't know everything, so I will gladly say that.
Do. It's all right.
Let's see here. There was one other thing. I know I'm missing it. I wanted to show.
Well, the texture stuff, it's like, if you start enabling it, you start getting different things and whatnot, but we'll end up breaking the bake.
So one other thing we're going to do real quick, just to show this, because, so say for instance, you don't want to have to go through this whole process again of creating everything. I've only like changed something here. There's some really cool right-click options here. So we can actually rebuild, like for instance, if we get rid of one of these boxes, I'm not going to rebuild it just because I don't want to set off a huge process again. It should only rebuild the one, but if I were to delete one of the boxes, I could regenerate that section.
This works really, really well. In my experience, this works really, really well for if you have your base LOD 0, right? As soon as you get LOD 1 and whatever, then you have to figure out where this actor exists in each one of those. And then you have to go rebuild each one of those if you make a change. But if you have just the one, like, click and drag a cube in there, right? Like, this is fine. This isn't going to take that long.
I did want to show something this
click
way
and drag
too,
a cube in there, and then drag that, into one of our LOD clusters.
Okay, and then I'll come back to that one then. Okay.
You okay? You hurt yourself?
Okay.
Okay.
Put this right over here on top of this guy, so I know it gets built with it. Okay.
And now we can click and drag that in, or we can, there was a right-click method to add it, wasn't there?
Let's see here.
I think it was on the, can you click in?
Oh, actually, you know what?
Or is it in the scene outliner?
Scene outliner, and what I can do is I can...
World outliner.
That just means you've been around too long.
Yeah, it really does. There it is.
Just like calling the content browser a generic browser.
Cube 5.
Okay, so Cube 5, we're going to do...
just click and drag.
And drag it onto here, so now it's included with this cluster.
And then we can just right-click and rebuild that.
It's showing you... I did want to call this out real quick, because this is a new feature with 4.14 for anyone. I'm just going to do simulate real quick. You'll notice up here it says HLOD clusters have not been built.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing here is not built. This is a really good reminder. So if you do change something, and you'll see it's also propagated down here to our LOD level 1, that needs to be rebuilt. So we'll just hit stop there. It's kind of like the lighting needs to be rebuilt warning. It's a really good warning there.
More text on the screen to let me know that I haven't done something.
Okay, so what we can do is, since we updated that one, click on...
Yeah, no, yeah.
I'm just going to show it. I don't want to...
Yeah, we can build proxy mesh. And
yeah. Build proxy mesh.
Do it.
Do it?
Do it.
Okay.
It's a small one in the corner. And hopefully it rebuilds just that one and doesn't go down to its brother. But either way, we're only building 2 LODs anyway. And we can answer some more questions while we wait. Alexander?
All right, so we have quite a few questions here, and since we're doing another thing, we've got some time for them. So, will HLOD work with voxels?
What?
Voxels.
Voxels.
Yeah. But
well,
I mean...
no. Okay, so
This is a-
HLOD, let's be clear, HLOD is a completely offline process,
Yes.
right? Like, if you want to try to work it into an online process, like where you're actually building on the fly, I wish you the best. I mean, and because it is really, it's not designed for it. It's designed to be really, really heavy on the processor, and it's not something you really want to think about passing down to your users. So a voxel-based system will either I don't know, I've seen people do it with cubes, right? You generate a bunch of cubes, and you just kind of run with it. The problem with that ends up being, well, you have all those wasted faces. Okay, fine, we get rid of the wasted faces, and we're going to actually use a proxy mesh, or a procedural mesh. Okay, great, you're using a procedural mesh. At that point, why do you need HLOD? I mean, you have a single mesh at that point that you're defining and building UVs for on the fly. Like you would atlas out your entire. Let's think Minecraft real quick. You atlas out the entirety of your materials, and this is grass, and that's stone, and that's dirt, and that's whatever. And then you can just set your UVs for these generated faces that are all a part of a single actor. Right? And of course, you wouldn't do just a single actor for the world. You would cut it up into chunks and things along those lines. So that way you're not reprocessing the entire world every time you do something. However, procedural mesh is by far the superior choice when it comes to generation, in that case for voxels. So.
Alrighty. So let's see here.
Give me another one.
All right, we'll give you.
Come on.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay.
Come on.
So
Knock 'em
So
out.
this one's actually kind of an overall design choice kind of idea here. Would it just be easier to only do a low poly game, or what? Like.
What do you mean by that's a
Will it work
stylistic question, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Like if you were doing a low poly game, then would you need this system to begin with?
Probably no.
I mean,
like
probably
I think
not.
the same thing with like a voxel game. You're probably not going to need this system
But
to begin with.
are you building Paragon? Right.
Yeah. Then
You might want it, given how many, given your mesh density
this is
across
definitely
the
going-
entire map.
Yeah,
Things along those lines.
all the way back to the base theory of what this is for is definitely more for you've got something that's really high poly, and then you have various lower versions of it, so that you can. Oh, I see what's going on. So the point being that that what
you have very nice hands.
you have like my hands are much higher poly like when you're up close, and then when you when you actually are like farther away, you want them to be chunkier and chunkier, so you're rendering less and less vertices, and it's less of on the process. So
There we go.
So it's
All right.
just
so
goes
Alex
back
has-
to the core of what
to
this
the
is for.
Alex
If you
has
have
chunky
low
hands.
poly items, if you're using this for low poly things or voxels, then it's probably already low enough.
Thank you, Clint. All right. Anyway, so we
Okay, so-
finished our building. It actually only generated the one thing that
Right.
we right-clicked on.
So my fears have been elated, I guess.
Yep. And now we can see that our LOD active
Okay.
one has changed.
So now if we open this up,
We have a
yay,
new white cube.
new cube. And we'll also see that in our material
There it is,
that
it's
has
right
now
there.
been chunked down here in this little section.
And actually, looking at it, I think we have our answer to the question I just asked. Does it create multiple atlases? And it looks like the answer is yes. And it occurred to me why it would do that. Because we're going to minimize the total number of UVs because you can bake lighting.
Yes, let me actually go back to that.
Yes, because these are completely compatible.
Brought up a
with bake
really
lighting.
good thing here. So, so with the original layouts, what it's done is it actually grabs these, and this is one box UV here. This is a UV, and this is just the texture UV here. So since we actually generate the light map by default,
Yep.
you'll see it actually goes ahead and repacks everything in there really nice and clean for you. So that way it should be a system that you don't have to worry about coming and tweaking a lot of these things after the fact. You should be able to just roll with it and build lighting, not have to worry about that. It's like light maps or
No,
something
we're
that
not building lighting.
no, we're not.
I'm
But-
and the reason I say that is I'm pretty sure this computer is not connected to the
Oh.
Swarm agent here.
Yeah.
So if it was connected to the Swarm agent, I'd be like, yeah, sure, do this. But I'm pretty sure we're not.
But just for the simplicity of everything, it's like having a system that goes ahead and worries, and takes care of all this without you having to worry about it is a seamless process that you really don't have to sit there and cook dinner while you generate your whole map initially. So.
And now we have a lot of documentation on a lot of the settings in here. So, I mean, I'm looking, we have a lot of questions, and we are time limited today.
Okay.
So the one thing that I really want to go over is the HLOD bounding volume thing.
Okay.
The box, the cube of doom that you can make to define
Okay.
LODs.
All right, so let's see here. Let's back up here, and I've got my little clump that I've made. And what we can actually do is select this, and we can grab it from our world outliner, and if we drag it in here on the LOD level 0, it'll go ahead and generate our level 1 as well. What we'll see is
It creates a whole new one for you.
whole new one for us. That's one way to go about it. And what we can actually do is, like, say for instance, if you want to be able to include extra actors in here without having to go through this whole drag it from the level outliner, the world outliner, into our thing, we can actually go to create a hierarchical load volume around it, and you can actually use this from the volumes panel as well, if I spell right.
Common PUD.
So you can actually drag this in and create these volumes that, if you want to be more defined with how your clusters are created, you can actually drag these around and around a section of actors that you want to essentially override, and say, I want to only use these actors in this volume. And what it'll do is it'll use the cluster settings that we have to grab. Let's see here. So it'll use these bounds here, and it'll use the percentage fill rate to go ahead and start creating a volume cluster here for those actors. So
neat.
I think that kind of covers that. Unless
you want to.
Unless
I mean, literally, you can drag the thing over an entire group of stuff, and it'll just be like, okay, right, and it generates an HLOD level 0 for the entirety of what's in it, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, that's...
Yeah, and we do have a decent example in documentation to actually go ahead and show this as well, if maybe I'm a little unclear about it.
Yeah, it's whatever it contains, it generates. It's like nav mesh, right?
Yeah, it's like nav mesh. It's like a light mass volume, only calculating really things in there and lower outside. Yeah, it's a really succinct system.
Do we know if this works with Vertex Paint? If it says Vertex Paint on it, it's still
there's an option for your textures to bake down your vertex.
Ooh, bake down your vertex.
It'll bake your vertice colors or extra vertice data that you have. It's material.
Use vertex data for baking.
Yep. And also bake vertex data to mesh.
Yes.
So that'll actually come along for the ride. So if you've been out there and you've been painting terrain fill pieces, and you have a terrain material to be used on top of those, all of that's coming along for the ride as well, assuming you enable the options. If you don't enable the options, of course, no. But it should come along for the ride when you do enable these.
All right.
What else you got?
And I think the answer is no, but does this work with instant meshes with foliage? And I think the answer is no there, because it's already its own system of...
And they're already really heavily optimized for this.
Yep, so that's just its own system of optimization. Let's see here. Does this generate a new material or material instance? I think you guys at some point answered that.
It generates a new material instance from a default HLOD material.
So what we get here is you essentially have this base
flattened material.
Hey, you get better eyes than me. You get this base flattened material, and then what happens is essentially just this gets a bunch of stuff plugged into it, so that way we can actually create these instances for this material that are actually used. And then you can
see
come back
there it is, there's your pack metallic, pack roughness, specular, so it knows everything that's been coming in. So if you ever need to know that, did this material, when you ran it, did it pack metallic? Well, there's your answer, right? Yes, when this was run.
So while we're on the subject of materials real quick, the option for merge materials is on by default. For anything like where you're using translucency for glass or water or anything like that, masked materials without having to go back and touch the base material or create a new base material. If you need the option to uncheck merge materials and actually just have those just be a material ID or element ID, you still get the full access to your original base material or instant materials that you've previously set up for these individual meshes.
Neat.
So,
And in the kind of same vein of the materials and stuff, does this also work with objects with transparency? Does it create a new transparency?
no.
So that is a no.
So there's if anyone wants to do this, like the like if you include starter content, you get the basic default level that has the table, the chairs, and you get the little statue that's got the glass on there. If you were to set up similar settings to this, like say a 500 bound radius, that'll grab that chair, table, and that glass. And as you pull back, based on the level distance, you'll kind of see these same things, like where you lose like the roughness or something like that.
The reflectivity of it, yeah.
Yeah, because like, for instance, like with glass, since that's a transparent material, and transparency has its own way of working with the engine and the materials versus an opaque material, that's something you want to consider is like maybe you don't include that mesh with the with HLOD.
Yeah, and it was something we've been showing you is adding stuff. You can also remove stuff from these. So if your transparent thing got added, you remove it from the cluster and it won't generate.
You can remove it from the cluster. Another real quick option here. So let me put this over here. So if you never want a static mesh to ever generate, you can just type in load or LOD. And oh, that's going to haunt me.
Yep.
And then enable auto LOD generation here. It'll never be used with the HLOD system.
Right.
So
let's say, for example, as a practical example, you have the lamp there, and you don't want it to generate with your HLOD. What you would do then is you could go generate a blank LOD1, which then there's no mesh in there. So what happened is as you zoom out, for optimization reasons, it would simply cease to exist. That way you don't have to deal with it. It's not there. It's not rendering. But at the same time, you can't see it anyway because you're on the moon, right? And you can't see the lantern from there. So it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah, it's good.
I mean, games are funny that way. It's not like you have super bionic vision where you can see 50 kilometers away and you can see the one candle lit in the window.
No, but there are some where you have like the super sniper scope kind of thing, and then but then when you do that, you want it to.
But that's why
use the screen space.
Screen percentages are so nice, so that way you zoom in and all the stuff gets really nice, and the lantern.
I was going to say, but that's automatic thanks to the screen percentage. So even if you do have the super zoom, your problem is solved.
Your problem solved.
Yeah, it's all good.
More optimization overall. So
yep.
Yeah, good optimization.
Always a good thing.
Middle has a good question here. We actually have just a couple more questions, but I'm going to try to knock these out because we have kind of a hard cutoff in about 10 minutes. But if I duplicate one cluster that is already generated, will it use the same, I guess, information, or do I need to do a generation for the duplicate that I've made?
I have no earthly idea.
Well, when you duplicate, we now have this option where it says not built. So if you were to duplicate, like drag and duplicate that cluster, it's going to be.
It depends on if that checkbox is checked.
One thing I've not tried, since these are their own static meshes, if I drag it in, this isn't going to show.
No, it's now
in here. It's its own static mesh. Now that's a whole other thing with like the HLOD system is that this is a level specific thing. It's not placing these new actors. It's taking and creating a.
There's a tertiary actor. That sits there. You don't see it.
Right.
And it is swapping these things in and out for you. So the fact that this exists. Now, if you wanted to merge some stuff down, probably an okay way to do it. You probably want an artist to actually go in and manually merge stuff.
Well, I will go ahead and highlight the new feature from 4.14, which is actually you can select meshes and make a static mesh. You can make a static mesh out of.
We have a combined static meshy thing.
Yeah.
Don't we?
So you don't have to do that now.
Yeah. Now there's like a right-click entry, isn't there?
But if it should be convert actors to static mesh.
Yep.
So and that'll take any selected actors in the level and go ahead and convert them.
I'm pretty sure that is a resurrection of a feature from Unreal 3 or 4 early.
At least I think it was.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure.
Remember.
I'm pretty sure that already existed. But.
So.
It's good to see it again.
Right.
All right.
Okay, so-
In your example, is the reduced try count changing?
No.
No,
No.
the triangle. We're not reducing triangles.
So if you have a simply gone integration, which is we have a whole blog post on that. I can kind of walk you through getting a license, and
It's free.
And it's free from the launcher and whatnot. So you would actually get a window here that allows you to go through and select. Select there and go ahead and reduce your LOD levels and decimate those.
Your level of detail levels?
Yes, your level of detail levels.
By the way,
Your pin number?
what does decimate actually mean?
Oh, mesh reduction. So you're reducing.
No, decimate.
Destroy?
No, it means reduced by a tenth.
Oh, okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, because des.
Des.
Ah,
Yeah, it's reduced by a tenth.
Latin.
Thanks, Magic the Gathering. Okay.
Oh, fun fact.
Decimation web. Anyway.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right, you got time for
Yeah, we
another
got-
question
we
here?
got-
Okay.
we got time for a couple more.
Does it work with world composition / level streaming? Yeah, that was a couple.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
was
part of the
asking
level.
about level streaming earlier too.
Well, it's a part of the level,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So it's level specific. You build it, and then if you stream it in, you stream in all these actors just like you would stream in any other actor. So the rough answer is yes.
Alrighty, cool.
One quick thing while he's finding a question. I touched on this earlier, but while I
found a
was
question.
building. So we didn't generate with these originally, but the collision that would have come in, had we generated all the collision with it and merged it, you would actually have boxes for each one of these. I would say that's probably not the best optimization
that's a
thing,
lot of
especially
volumes.
at the distance that you're going to pull back and see this level of detail. So if you need the collision, I would say either use our
Use a 26 Doppler a box.
yeah.
Don't
and-
use
and-
auto convex.
Not on this, no. You definitely want to try and keep your holes as low as possible for that. So, okay. Next question.
Any quick way to convert duplicate static meshes into instances of one mesh? I don't
think we just
I mean, is that
showed.
basically what we're doing here, or?
Well,
'Cause-
so if you wanted, so let's say for example, if you wanted to duplicate, scroll up to LOD actor 1, or yeah, that one. Duplicate. Just hold down Alt and drag. It doesn't do anything.
Nope.
Right? We don't duplicate these things because it's not technically a thing that exists. So there's no real quick way to duplicate these structures. But what you could do is select all the actors within a group, and you can move it around, and then you can create a bounding volume around it, which will create the LOD bounding volume around it so that you can use it in that fashion. But at the end of the day, again, this is optimization near the end, or at the point where you're just like, okay, things need to speed up a little, and I'm going home for the evening. Push button, receive optimization when you get back, and you can playtest during the day. So this group of stuff that we have selected in the corner here, if you absolutely are like, man, I just want this to be an actor, one actor. Again, we just showed you select everything, right click, convert to static mesh.
Yeah.
Right, and that is probably the most effective way. Yeah, convert actors to static mesh. That'll be your most effective way to handle that situation. It'll create you a whole new static mesh, and then you can go place that, and it gets actually full materials.
Yep.
Now, mind you, it is all the materials. You have not saved yourself anything.
Nope.
You've batched all of this stuff together, and you're just getting all the draw calls as they exist. I'm hoping UV channel 1 looks a lot better.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
that's great. That makes me feel a lot better. So just some things to be aware of there. What else you got?
Well, let's see here.
We got one, maybe two more questions.
Why they doesn't use LOD coloration? Why they doesn't? Thanks, Pirate Tony.
What do you mean?
It's talking about the optimization view mode.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Um,
We got something over here.
low colorization.
Now pull back and see what happens.
Yeah.
And the answer is no.
I would say that's either something that's just not been implemented.
But also at
Or-
the same time, if I remember correctly, if you have a static mesh with an LOD,
Oh.
we will use the LOD
Yes, you actually will.
equivalent to the LOD level that you were in. So that would probably show, but since we haven't actually, quote, generated an LOD, right? Like, it's combined stuff in a different way. Like, there's nothing really to show.
All right, let's see here.
This doesn't have any LODs.
Right.
No.
Well, in a second. Do it real quick while we're answering another
I think
question.
we're about good on questions, actually.
Apply changes.
Apply.
What did you do? Okay.
Okay, so...
5 minutes to 3.
Yeah, well. All right. That one's good.
Build it,
That's okay.
and let's see what happens. This is going to save. Go back in and save.
No, not that one.
That one. I'm not seeing any changes. So, nope, doesn't look like it's compatible with this vmode.
Yeah.
Currently. I mean, it sounds like a bug to me.
That'd be a good question to throw up on, like any questions that we're not getting to, throw those up on the forum post. I'll do what I can to go through, find answers for you guys and answer those. If this does like a bug or something, I'll reach out and we'll get that reported or see if we can get something implemented for it.
Sweet. All right, well,
awesome.
that's basically it. We have a quick meeting here that we got to run to. Tune in Thursday. It'll be me, Alexander, Lauren Ridge, Richard Hinckley, Sam Dieter? I can never. I
think so.
He said it a million times to me, and I swear. And Wes Button. We'll be covering. Essentially, it's a learning resources stream where we're going to be talking about learning resources
and giving away a bunch of stuff.
We have a ton of stuff to give away. I got keyboards and
we're cleaning out the
mice
closet,
and stickers and. Oh man, I have so much stuff to give away.
All right.
And if you haven't seen it, I know Lauren's posted a few times on chat over here, but there's a whole forum post in there to enter into the drawing. All you got to do is go in there and mention a learning resource, a web page, a document, a Twitch stream, something that helped you during your development time in UE4, and you'll be entered into the drawing. And we'll be pulling those out of a pie hat and reviewing them, and whoever we draw out wins stuff.
And just for a quick shout out to the engine support team, if I know we've helped you guys out a lot.
Those guys rock.
Give some shout outs to them there as well. It's like they really deserve it.
Yeah.
They do a good job.
And it feels good to just get some recognition.
Yes, it does.
So thanks for all of the comments and questions, everybody. We had a really good time. But we'll see you all on Thursday.
Bye.